Grace and peace of Christ be with you. My name is Ryan Sermons, minister of the Northwest and Central, Newcastle upon Tyne pastorate of the United Reformed Church in the UK. Today's message focuses on a challenging and sort of hopeless exchange between God and the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 6, verses 1 through 13. I invite you to pause and read it. This message is given for West End United Reformed Church on the 5th Sunday after the Epiphany, on Sunday, the 6th of February, 2022. Please pray with me. O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be beautiful in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I don't like the reading from Isaiah 6. And I'd be surprised if anyone hearing this does. Isaiah the prophet is standing in the heavenly court, overwhelmed by the glory of God. The whole house is filled with smoke. Seraphim, these odd creatures of 6 wings who cover their face and their feet, sing the Gloria. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And Isaiah? He does not, at any moment, think this is a good place to be, nor a place he deserves to be. I am lost, he cries, for in the midst of all this glory and all this astounding beauty, he is hyper-aware of everything he has ever done wrong. And as such, he cannot possibly stand in the presence of God, the Lord of hosts. But the seraphim touches his lips with a coal. Painful thing, we could imagine, that makes it clear he belongs in this place with God. And God asks a question, not necessarily to Isaiah, but saying, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" And Isaiah, without even waiting to know who or what it is he will be tasked to do, says, "Here I am, send me." Maybe he was in a hurry to get out of there. Have you ever volunteered to do something and immediately regretted it? I'm talking to church folks, so probably. I wonder if Isaiah felt that way when he received the task he was given. Of course, we all say we want to be sent by God into something. But what if we really don't like it? God's task to Isaiah is worth rereading, though here from the New Revised Standard Version. Go and say to this people, keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull, and their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. In other words, give a boring sermon. And when Isaiah asks, in shock, for how long God intends for this to happen, God responds, "Until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is a desolate waste." It is an utterly hopeless message. There is nothing that Isaiah or the people themselves can do about the coming doom. Yes, there might be hope that the stump may one day sprout new life. But for the people of the moment, there's nothing they can do. God has willed their destruction. Isaiah's, "Here I am, send me." That role is straightforward and unequivocal. Keep them from perceiving and doing anything about the coming destruction. It's unavoidable. And historically, the destruction came to pass. Babylon destroyed the city in 587 BCE after King Jehoiakim stopped paying tribute. His calculus was political, figuring that the Egyptians would come to save them and have Jerusalem under Egyptian rather than Babylonian sway. He figured wrong. Egypt didn't come to rescue them, and Babylon made an example of Jerusalem to every other small kingdom that thought they could withhold tribute. By destroying the city, he also removed it from being any sort of stronghold in the trade routes running between Mesopotamia and Egypt. Jehoiakim's miscalculation led to uncountable numbers of people being killed, leaders scattered, and another 50 years before the city would begin to be rebuilt, following Babylon's defeat by the Persian king Cyrus the Great. So no, I don't like this passage, because it does the one thing we pray we never want to happen. It says that destruction will happen. There's really nothing we can do to change it, and that's willed by God. It leaves me feeling powerless. It is hopeless. We may want to blame the impending doom on past behavior of the people, but as Isaiah's own behavior in the court of God demonstrates, all of us are sinners. Everyone has done something that may have contributed to the impending sense of doom, and we all are imperfect when judged by divine standards. But maybe being hopeless is exactly what is needed. There are situations around the world that are truly hopeless. Maybe we need to learn as Christians to come to terms with that so we can focus on what really does matter, because sometimes the hope we think we have is in reality a false hope. Take Auschwitz, the entry to the infamous concentration camp, which took the breath of life out of a staggering 1.1 million people. That entrance broadcast a cynical lie. Arbeit macht free. Work sets you free. It was not true. Miguel de la Torre, a Latinx Christian ethicist, challenges Christians to embrace hopelessness. He argues that we cling to hope as an excuse to keep us from doing the very things we are supposed to do as Christians. An example he gives is of aid workers in a poor neighborhood. One of the workers, wiping away tears in the midst of poverty surrounding her, smiles at the hope she saw in the eyes of a young girl, a hope she attributed to her actions, to their actions as aid workers. De la Torre retorted, that's not hope in her eyes. Don't you realize she will be doing tricks to put food on her family's table in 5 years? He argues that unless and until we fix the global inequality that creates situations that allow young girls to grow up in such horrible places with little to no real hope for change, we will never see any real change. Just fleeting examples of false hopes that insulate us from any meaningful response. He suggests that we will never take such meaningful action until those who have much, such as most of us in the Western world, understand and experience hopelessness alongside the global poor. The aid worker was challenged to understand that her one-off help, though not bad in itself, is not enough to stem the tide of global poverty. And until she feels in her own soul the hopelessness of that situation, she may be deluded in thinking her solo efforts are good enough. She needs to be part of something much bigger than Band-Aid help in poor neighborhoods. Take cancer. We don't argue that people deserve cancer or any other illness. Yet cancer happens through no discernible fault of our own. It's terrible. It takes away life. I have seen friends die leaving behind young children and wonder, what is this? It all cascades from there. What does it mean for children to be in poverty? What does it mean for Auschwitz to have happened? What does it mean for friends to die of cancer, others to slip into Alzheimer's and linger for 10 years? What does it mean to know that climate change is creating irreversible problems and realize that our responses seem, as with this reading, dulled, heavy, and without global resolve, despite clear scientific and moral knowledge of the death and destruction that will be rendered? And the truth is, I don't know. Some will tell us that such evil should be evidence that either God doesn't exist, or if such a God exists, people don't want to know such a God. Primo Levi, who survived Auschwitz, made that clear when he said, "There is no God, only Auschwitz." There are days, church, when I am tempted by such an argument. Maybe you are too. But then I reminded that maybe survival isn't the point of our lives. Maybe the building up of vast cities and civilizations isn't the point of why we are here. How much of our hope is built on our continuation and the continuation of our stuff? We confess as Christians, and as Isaiah said, sinners, but I think we are sinners in the hands of a loving God. And perhaps what that means is that when we accept the hopelessness of an impending doom, something over which we have no control, we find a clarity to what our lives truly mean. How can we know hope without knowing hopelessness? Now let me be clear. This is not a balm to those in pain at the loss of someone they loved. This is not to assuage that grief, for grief in its rawness may highlight other aspects of our life that matter. Not that we neglected them, but that matter. But we would never, ever choose it. Nor am I saying that everything happens for some inscrutable reason, but it might be, perhaps, something like the invitation Jesus gave to Simon Peter to cast his net on the other side of the boat when faced with exhaustion and hopelessness. Stop trying to fix everything by doing things the same way, or making small changes here and there. Try something new, something which our daily exhaustion prevents us from seeing. And at the end, stop whatever it is you think you're doing and follow Jesus despite the nagging hopelessness around the world, around you. How do we do that? Well, we hold up those significant, shining moments in human life where laughter breaks out, where bread is broken, where a meal is shared, where you are seen and heard and loved. In the midst of one hopelessness, these can be found, inviting us to a new thing to value and hold dear without losing memory of the old. In Ecclesiastes, we are reminded repeatedly that all is vanity and a chasing after the wind, that we are all dust, and to dust we shall return. And yes, our strivings and our strategic goals, even the ones we develop for the church, can be nothing but vanity. But what matters, according to the writer of Ecclesiastes? That meal around the table, the ones earned by the sweat of our brow and the ones freely received, with people we love and cherish, or people we seek to love and cherish. And if we recognize what truly matters, putting aside all our sinful striving, all our pride and pomp and circumstance, how differently might the world look? If we prioritized the meal with friends and family and took seriously the logistics behind that, such that all who participated in the bringing of the food to the table from field to table had enough, what if creation was respected in that process? What if we did the right thing, whatever it was, not out of reward for a longer chance at mere survival, not because we seek some heaven after death, but because it is the right thing in that moment, the thing that cherishes a moment in human life? Perhaps Isaiah found acceptance with the impending doom, for history has shown us that it does happen. And perhaps he took some cold comfort in a future renewal of life, one that he had no promise to see in his own lifetime. And as a church, what is our role in this? To be a place where people are able to forge, develop, and support one another in living by these values. It's not easy. But hopelessness is not the same as despair. When faced with the sheer volume of what is in front of us, we might give in to despair and existential longing. And as a church, we are here to lift up the value of human life as Jesus himself was lifted up, after having lifted up so many other ordinary lives, and to celebrate that in ways small and large. The Tuesday afternoon lunch club in this church is one such example. In a warm setting with good food, we connect and share and develop that which really matters. The cards this church sends at Christmas to those who cannot physically join us, the invitation to people who may often be excluded because of a different ability, these actions matter. Because there is much impending doom facing us. And we will lift the challenges we know of in prayer, even though we may feel powerless in doing anything against them. And beyond that, much of it may truly be out of our control. And perhaps we, as sinful as we are, have played some role in creating the pain which is out there in the world. We will ask for forgiveness. But what we will also do, in the face of such overwhelming challenge, is not just give in to the existential crisis and say, there is nothing for us to do. We may recognize, we may experience the hopelessness of the entirety, but live, nonetheless, by our values. That's real faith, to live by the values of faith, hope, and love, despite hopelessness, without giving way to despair, to change our behavior in ways large and small that may lead to change without a guarantee it will fix things. In doing so, we soberly turn and face that which is facing us. We don't flinch from climate change, nor cancer, nor loneliness, nor global poverty, nor war, nor physical differences, no matter how challenging it might seem. We work at those tasks we must, but we cherish, we celebrate, we laugh at the human moments of life that shine out to us, for mere survival is not our goal. We do not know when we will die, and we cannot control everything. Lifting up humanity in every moment and living by values that celebrate that, however, is what we are challenged to do. Even at the entry to Auschwitz, humanity shone out. The people who made that false hope, cynical lie of a sign at the entry to Auschwitz engaged in an act of resistance that didn't let hopelessness destroy their humanity. They made the sign imperfect by putting the B in Arbeit, or Arbeit, my German's bad, upside down. It wasn't noticed by the camp's overseers. But that little symbol of imperfection made the sign imperfect, a small note that what was happening there was not some final solution, not some good thing for humanity, but profoundly evil. Did the people who did that survive? Did they think doing that would keep them physically alive? Almost definitely not. But humanity shone through. They shine through nameless today. And today, we can still celebrate that spirit in the upside down B.